Hello, this is Jeff with Arizona Hot Homestead, and let's get a little wet today. Let's talk about water and state of Arizona. Pretty dry state. Did you know when you buy land in Arizona, you do not own water? So any water in the ground or on the surface, you own nothing, baby. State owns all the water. In fact, the Arizona Department of Water Resource is the department that owns the water. Now you can apply for a permit to have water rights so you can use it, but you can't own it. Now the government website is there, the .gov website there, and that's a great resource. There's other companies that work with them that they have given permission and kind of given rights to help manage the waterways in Arizona. So they're one of the companies is like Salt River Project, which they've got some power stations along the lakes that we have in Arizona, so they'll do some hydropower, and they'll have other water resources organizations out there that help manage the water. Some of them will help manage the wells, and some of them help manage the wetlands where we're trying to replenish the groundwater and things like that. So there's other websites out there that you can get a lot of good information from. But I started with the government's website and just kind of stuck with that. So when you're looking for a piece of land, check out what your state is on the water and who manages your water and how all that works. So let's talk then on how this whole process works. In Arizona, when you go to buy your off-grid property, your homestead, your second home, your vacation home, whatever you want to call it, your piece of land in Arizona, the way it works is you have what's called bundle of rights. And out of that bundle of rights, one of them is called surface rights. So you own the surface. You have rights to the rocks and the dirt and the plants and all that. Kind of makes sense. Then you have what's called air rights. So you own the airspace. However, depending on the location, depending on how much airspace you have rights to. So, like for an example, in downtown Phoenix, there's an airport nearby. You got to have planes have to fly over your home sometimes, depending on exactly where you're at. And so you can't own that space, but you can own up to that space. Out in a rural community, your ceiling is a lot higher, so you're going to own more airspace. You also have what's called subsurface rights. So some people call it mineral rights. Anything below the ground, you own that too. Gold, silver, copper, oil, you own all that. Extracting it might be another story though. You depending again your location depends on how or if you can extract it. Like downtown Phoenix, it's not going to be too easy for you just to start digging up your backyard or your front yard or something like that and start mining for gold or pulling your copper out of the ground or whatever, because you may run into some code violations there. But in your rural communities, you can just start digging away on your property. So there's some areas where you can, some areas where you can't extract it. You might have to get permits on extracting some, but for the most part, if you're in a rural community, you can dig away. However, though, once you touch water, stop. Can't touch that water. Don't touch this, something like that, you know? But yeah, you don't have water rights, so you can't use that water. You can't do anything with it. You have to stop. Now, rain's another story. Rain you get. Rain before it hits the surface, you can own that. You can capture and store that and have rights to that. But all the other wells and your surface water, like your rivers and streams and creeks and lakes and things, you gotta apply for a permit. You gotta get a permit for the right to use that water. Let's talk a little bit more detail about the well water. You know, the groundwater, your aquifers. The state has a lot of wells out there that are monitoring the water tables. So, and that's how much water is in each of the aquifers. So what they'll do basically is they'll say, especially that website I showed you earlier, Department of Water Resource has a chart on there that will actually show you where all these wells are, roughly the locations, and where these aquifers are, and they'll tell you which ones are actually increasing in the water table or decreasing in the water table. For an example, the Prescott, Arizona area, nice community, growing like crazy. about every single monitor well up there is all showing that the water table is decreasing. So they're going to be hurting for water here pretty soon. But there's different wells. There's personal wells, or your private wells. There's the community wells. There's agricultural wells. There's monitoring wells. Every well has to be registered with the state. Has to be certified and registered. There are no more agricultural wells currently being approved. Community wells can still be approved, but agricultural ones right now are not being approved. If you're getting your well dug, you've got to go through the state's website there, and there is an area that they will give you a list of all the certified well drillers. And when they drill, obviously based on your permit, they will drill your well for you. And in drilling that well, they will give you the information that you need to then register that well. On a personal well, on a private well, it will be set up so you are getting up to 35 gallons per minute. So that's a lot of water. So you're going to get more water than you know what to do with, as long as I guess there's water in the ground. But that's the maximum flow, and it's got to be registered to you. And oh, get this, on wells, a well is considered personal property. So let's say I sell you some property. You buy a property off of me. And in that contract, I don't say anything about the well. It's personal property. I sold you the property. I didn't sell you the well. I can take that well and the pipe that goes down there and the check valve and the whole, or what they call foot valve, and the pump and everything, I can pull that all out and take it with me. Then I go to the state and I say, hey, this registered well is now inactive, but I still own that well. So you can't even do anything with that particular well. You have to drill a new well and have that well certified, because my well has been capped and is labeled inactive, and I'm still the owner of that well. So it's interesting how that works. Now I could sell you the well, then you have to go to the states and get it re-registered in your name. So I have to then tell the state I sold it to you. You then have to go to the states and put it in your name, basically. Kind of like a car, if you will. You gotta get registered in your name. It's weird on how that stuff works. It makes sense though. In fact, you can even, when they do their monitors, they can audit your well. And when they go to audit your well, if they find out that you're pulling more than that 35 gallons per minute, you can be fined for that. If you contaminate the water supply, you can be fined for that, obviously. And if you're just using too much water, you can be fined for it. However, no one's been fined for that for decades. So you shouldn't have any problems with that. But anyhow, if they did, they can also cap that well on you, for an example, and you won't have access to it. Now, on this property that you bought, let's say that there's a river or a stream or a creek or something like that that's flowing through it. And you're like, wow, this is so cool. I got this river flowing through it. I can create a little pond, have some fish growing in there. This is awesome. Wrong. You can't touch that water. You cannot build a dam. You cannot build a pond. You cannot reroute the water. Like, let's say if the water flow is in your way of a driveway or where you want to put your chicken coop or your house or whatever, you can't move it over 50 feet and reroute that water. You have to go to the state, ask for permission. You got to go to the state and get a permit to either dam it or put a pond or to reroute that water. It gets inspected by the Army Corps of Engineers, see if it was done right. And in some cases, they're the ones who have to do it, if it's a major project. But yeah, you don't own that water. Most creeks and streams and things like that in Arizona, they're dry. It's a dry state, obviously. So most of them are dry 90% of the time. And then when it rains, then you got water flowing. So a lot of that stuff will be dry. So you that dry wash, you own that wash. You own the surface of that. Once the water gets on there, again, you own what's underneath the water, but you don't own the water. But the weird part is, even though you own it, you can't change anything about that. So like if you want to put a fence around your property, you can run that fence down the middle of that waterway. As long as it doesn't change the flow of the water, you can do so. What else do I want to say about the rivers and lakes? Oh, first in, first rights. Let's say, for an example, you have this beautiful creek running through your property. It's flowing most of the time, right? Or all the time. And there's 5 landowners in a row. And you're the first one. you have what's called first in, first rights. Everyone's got that. What that means is you apply for your permit for the right to use that water. They allow you to use that water. They tell you how you can pull it out and how much you can use. You can bathe with it, garden with it, whatever you want to do. Then the next person, let's say they do the first in, first rights, so they're second in line with that water. Let's say third person said no, fourth person said yes, and fifth person also said yes. But by the time the water gets down to that fifth person, they apply for their first in, first rights, water rights, but there's no water left. Everyone else used it up. So sorry, how sad. You know, tough. You get none. You just got to keep renewing your permit and all that every year to get access to it, to have rights to that water just in case it does start flowing again. So, talked a little bit about the well water, talked a little bit about the surface water. You don't own any of that, but your rainwater, you got access to that. Capture it all. Bring in all that rainwater. Build as much of a rain catchment roof type system as you possibly can. Capture it all before it hits the surface, because technically, when it hits surface, it becomes surface water, state owns it. So you want to capture all that rainwater, and you want to store it, because that you can own. That you don't have to ask permission for again. So, and think of this. 1 inch of rain, 1,000 square foot roof equals 600 gallons. Now you figure how much rainfall you get in your area and how big your roof system is, and you kind of calculate how many gallons of rain that you can store every year. So, but yeah, pretty interesting on the way water works in Arizona, isn't it? So the Arizona Department of Water Resource owns the water. Landowners, you own squat. You do not own the water, but you can ask for rights to use the water in the way of a permit. Check out that Arizona Department of Water Resource website. There's other websites out there that are useful as well. Check your state and your community for your water information. But you may also now start thinking about other things too. What else is it that you think you have access to that maybe you don't? Jeff with Arizona Hot Homestead. I was getting wet with you today. Let's go dry off.